Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tracy Talks, aka the alternate point of view. Thank you so much if you are an OG, and welcome if you are brand new. Yes, this is a channel that mostly talks about true crime, but also is going to talk about like whatever the heck we want to talk about. So that's why we have changed the name to Tracy Talks and made it a little easier for people to find on here instead of typing in the alternate point of view. So, anyhow, let's get going. This channel started out covering trials, talking about Alec Murdaugh and all kinds of other stuff. But the main trial that I investigated from the beginning and really dug my heels into was Samantha Woll. And we are coming up on her 2-year death anniversary. And I want to get back to talking about Samantha Woll because, yeah, it's been 2 years and her killer is still out there. And I want to talk about this because I have my one and only member, Gwen, who is the one who turned me on to this case. And it seems like so long ago. But Gwen was the person who said, "Hey, Tracy, you need to look into this. This is wild. It's crazy. It's happening up here in Detroit, Michigan." Samantha Woll was a very prominent figure. I talk about this constantly. I've had many, many videos about Samantha Woll. I covered the entire trial. I was one of the only people who covered the trial. Court TV did a 15-minute snippet about this. Nancy Grace covered it in the very, very beginning when Samantha Woll was first murdered. Joe Biden had Karine Jean-Pierre do a press conference portion of her coverage on it when Samantha Woll was originally murdered. And heartfelt prayers, everything was going out to her family because she was such a prominent figure. And then suddenly it was radio silence. So Samantha Woll was a 40-year-old Jewish synagogue president and a very prominent Democrat figure in Detroit, Michigan. She worked for the likes of Alyssa Slockton. She was Dana Nessel, the Attorney General's best friend. She was all over. She worked on Senator Chang's campaign. She rubbed shoulders with Clinton, Obama, Gretchen Whitmer, Mike Dugan. So she was very, very well known. She built the Isaac Agree Synagogue in Detroit from the ground up, literally from rubble, to now being the only freestanding synagogue in Detroit, Michigan. Built it from literal condemnation to now it's worth millions. Okay, millions. So this woman is suddenly just murdered in her apartment, in her townhome that she owned in the middle of the night in Detroit, Michigan, a city that she loved. And it was national headline news. And this happened literally 2 weeks after Hamas invaded Israel. 2 weeks. So you had Hamas invade Israel on October 7th, 2023. And on October 21st, 2023, Samantha Woll, a very prominent Jewish Democrat figure, is attacked and killed in her home in Detroit, Michigan. And it's headline news. And then suddenly, no longer news. What's wild is that at that time, everyone was involved. The police department, Wayne County, the state police, even the FBI got involved into this case. Everyone was involved. The Attorney General, Dana Nessel, who was her best friend. I mean, it was insane the amount of feet on the ground, hands in the fire. I mean, so many people. Yet, even when there was a press conference given that said they had someone, they were honed in on someone, they just didn't want to say what relationship this person had with her. but they pretty much had their suspect. Now, this is someone who clearly knew who she was. It's someone close to her. Now, she was stabbed in the head, face, and neck 8 times. 8 times. It was all centrally located in this area, in the left side of her neck, the top of her head, and part of her chin. She just nicked her chin. Okay. I distinctly remember this case because I researched, I investigated, I studied it. I've done nothing but do this case for 2 years. And the police, after having evidence that, by the way, they did not test or check the bloody footprints in her townhome. They did not test Samantha's fingerprints. They did not test the rape kit that they did on Samantha. They did not do a full autopsy on Samantha. They did not do so many, many things in this case, including after her boyfriend, Jeffrey Herbstman, confessed to killing her. He confessed. He called 911 on himself and said, I killed my girlfriend. And gave her name, her address, her everything. And they let him go. Let him go. And not only did they let him go, they went a step further. The prosecutor's office went a step further and gave him use immunity for him to testify in court against the man that they would later charge with the death of Samantha. Yes. So not only did they do a complete 180 on their press conference, where they get up there and tell the public that they have no need to fear, that it's not a complete stranger on the street, that there's no one out there going around killing people in their homes. This is someone that she knew. They have narrowed it down. The community is safe. And then, complete 180, they pluck a complete stranger off the street. And the next thing you know, it is a random person who was walking downtown Detroit that night who just so happened to have a criminal background. Not the boyfriend who confessed, though. Not Jeffrey Herbstman. No. And the entire state of Michigan, city of Detroit, and Wayne County would come together and do everything in their power to take Michael Jackson Bolanos to trial and charge him with the murder of Samantha Woll. Tell me that that is not the most railroading, corrupt system you have ever heard of. You guys, this is just the beginning of this journey of who killed Samantha Woll. And here we are 2 years later, still asking that question. Who killed Samantha Woll? Why is her killer still walking free? And why is it that it took 2 years for Michael Jackson Bolanos to finally, after going through a trial, wrongful charges, wrongful conviction of lying to the police for something he didn't do, and serving 2 years in prison and having to go to an appeals court where he finally is getting an answer from an appeals court because a lower circuit judge, Margaret Van Houten, didn't like the Supreme Court Yeager, who said double jeopardy wasn't a good ruling. She disagreed. Judge Margaret Van Houten sat there and said she didn't think it was a good ruling. A woman who wasn't even a criminal lawyer before she got put in that judge's seat. She did real estate law. So go figure. She had it out for Michael from the beginning. We are going to go back and go through the entire trial. But first, let's watch the appeal hearing. And I want you to see how insane it is that Michael had to go all the way to the Michigan Court of Appeals in order to find finally possible freedom. But I want you to hear how the state prosecutor will stop at nothing. They will stop at nothing to keep Michael in prison for something he did not do. And how they have this poor family of Samantha Woll still bamboozled in their piss poor investigation. And the killer is still on the street. And why is Samantha Woll's family at an appeal for a man that was not convicted of her murder? This is an appeal for getting him out of prison for lying to the police. He was not convicted for murder. He was acquitted because he didn't do it. He did not do it. The prosecution could not prove that he did it because he didn't do it. Jeffrey Herbstman confessed to killing her. Jeffrey Herbstman can be seen running away from the scene. At least it looks like him. And we're going to see that in future videos. Jeffrey Herbstman confessed. Jeffrey Herbstman, at least a lookalike of Jeffrey Herbstman, can be seen running from the scene. Jeffrey Herbstman has no alibi. His phone is on airplane mode. And Jeffrey Herbstman has motive. Michael Jackson Bolanos has absolutely no motive, no reason, no nothing, and no evidence of even being in her home. And he didn't take anything. They're trying to say this is a burglary gone wrong. So I want you to hear what the prosecutor attorney says in the appeals court, because this is absolutely the most insane argument, because they have nothing else. They have literally nothing else. And I want you to see poor Samantha's family. I'm trying so hard to sympathize with them because I know they lost a loved one in a very horrific way. But there is more to this story that we are going to continue to unravel as we keep pulling that sweater thread out. If you want to go back and look at my other videos, Murder on Joliet Place, Who Killed Samantha Woll, I have an entire series. This is going to keep going until we find out who actually killed Samantha Woll. This is not going to stop because Michigan will not stop messing with Michael until we find out who killed Samantha Woll. Until this family has the truth and they understand that the truth is out there. Michael did not kill Samantha. So let's watch the appeal for Michael.
Number 372263, people of the state of Michigan versus Michael Manuel Jackson Bolanos, I believe. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Good morning, Your Honors. David Herskovic appearing on behalf of Michael Jackson Bolanos. So Your Honor did pronounce it correctly.
Thank you. Oh, wait, is this consolidated case? I believe that it is, so I have to announce another docket number. I apologize. Docket number it's consolidated with 372604. Again, people of the state of Michigan versus Michael Manuel Jackson Bolanos. So my apologies for cutting you off.
You know, I'm not used to not being able to sit on this side, so. David Herskovic appearing on behalf of Michael Manuel Jackson Bolanos. This has obviously been thoroughly briefed by both myself and brother counsel. I'll focus on our argument first. Really want to focus on the PSI issue. At trial, or I'm sorry, following trial, a motion was made to amend the PSI to strike information regarding the investigation into the charges for which Mr. Jackson Bolanos was acquitted. The trial court denied the motion. We therefore filed the appeal. We bring it up only because a PSI follows a defendant throughout the MDOC. Both as a former prosecutor and two trial judges, we're all well aware of this.
I was a prosecutor for 16 months, so
Still counts.
not really my calling card, but we understand that. We know that. Is he still, do you know if he's still incarcerated?
He is still incarcerated. He was denied parole on the first instance, which is part of, we expanded the record in this case to include the parole denial information. He had a perfectly clean prison record, but yet he was denied parole on his first instance because the parole board knocked him 3 points because they asserted that there was a death involved in the offense for which he was serving prison time. For what he was convicted of was lying to the police regarding thefts or larcenies from a motor vehicle. So the acquitted charges are now being used against him in terms of probation or of parole, which in our contention is a violation of Beck. Beck obviously indicates that you can't use acquitted conduct for purposes of sentencing. We feel that in this instance, that's exactly what happened, is that the parole board used the acquitted conduct of the first and second degree murder convictions and denied him parole because of that.
Don't they know that they shouldn't do that?
Well, they know that they shouldn't do that, but it doesn't stop people from doing that. I mean, that's exactly what happened here. He literally had 0 tickets. He had nothing in prison, but yet he was denied parole because of that -3 scoring that was on his, because of death resulting from the crime, which it didn't in this instance.
So what changes did you want to make to the PSI that you requested previously that were denied?
We asked that any reference to the investigation for the charges for which he was acquitted be stricken from the PSI.
But shouldn't the proper remedy simply be that he was acquitted of all of those charges? I mean, part and parcel when you're looking at the investigator's report is to provide a full picture of what happened on that, while still indicating the full picture of what happened is he was acquitted. He was found not guilty of certain charges and the other ones were dismissed. Wouldn't that essentially be the full picture?
In a perfect world, yes. And in this instance, the PSI did include that he was acquitted on those charges, but yet the parole board still used it in terms of denying parole for an offense which had 0 to do with the offenses for which he was acquitted.
But you're asking us to essentially sanitize the PSI, right?
Yes, because the PSI follows a defendant through the MDOC and has repercussions down the line.
But-
It's
It's accurate. It's accurate in that it says, this is what happened. Here's the investigation. He was acquitted of these charges, but here's what the jury found him guilty of.
It's accurate, but it's also irrelevant because the offense for which he was convicted was lying to the police. And again, if there's, the only reason he was denied parole was because they asserted that there was a death involved in the offense, but the offense was lying to the police. It wasn't first degree murder or second degree murder for which he was acquitted. I understand it's a novel argument. It is, might be creating new case law. We just feel he's got a due process right to a fair sentencing, to a parole process, and that this denies him the ability to have a fair parole process because of utilizing information that, again, is irrelevant to the offense for which he was convicted. And if
So I just want everyone to keep seeing, like, that's her family back there. That's her mom. That's her dad, her mom, and her sister. And they are holding their hands so tightly together. They're shaking, they're moving, they're making comments to each other. They are very animated, and they're definitely trying to sway the judges with their, emotions, and how animated they're being. Again, he did not kill her. He was acquitted of the charges. So what they are doing at this appeal hearing makes zero sense. He didn't do it. The jury found him not guilty on all the charges. The only charge Michael Jackson Bolanos was found guilty of was lying to police. And the lying to police charge is a weak charge at best because it was lying to police on what he was doing that night. And he wasn't even brought in to the police station to be asked about what he was doing that night. He was brought into the police department. And when we go back through this entire situation, you're going to see when he was originally brought in, he was brought in for a pair of glasses. They were like, hey, we're here to ask you about some glasses. They said they were asking him about breaking into cars. He said he wasn't breaking into cars, which he was. Technically, he was taking pictures of cars, what have you. But he fessed up very quickly about some glasses. So he was charged with lying to police based on the jury instruction. The jurors were like, okay, so he lied. He did lie. So he was sentenced to 18 months to 15 years for lying to the police. After he served his initial, I think it was 6 months, 8 months, he was up for parole, and the parole board denied him parole based on the charges he was acquitted. You can't do that. You can't say, oh, you're staying in because you weren't convicted of these terrible crimes, but you were charged with them. So we're going to keep you in here. So that's what they're appealing. They're appealing that he was acquitted. So here you are going to try to keep him in prison for stuff he wasn't convicted of. That's messed up. But that's what the state of Michigan is trying to do. They're trying to keep him in prison, even though he didn't do this. And that's what the appeals court is saying is like, how can they hold against him something he didn't do and he wasn't convicted of? So that's what this lawyer is asking the appeals court is like, let him out. This is not, they cannot hold something against him he was not convicted of. And the family is there trying to, look. Obviously, they're grieving. Obviously, they're sad. Obviously, it's a terrible thing. But he didn't do it. So being there, trying to keep him in prison, this isn't one of those kind of he's got to stay in prison situations. He didn't do it.
If there are no other questions as it regards our brief, or I'm sorry, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions this court may have. But beyond that, I would rely on our brief for this portion of the argument.
So the prosecutor is going to get up there and try to justify why they think.
I mean, I was up a little late watching that Tiger game.
No, you're
My
okay.
father.
Yeah.
I felt that way after the 5th inning.
Yeah.
Why
My kids turned on Dancing with the Stars, but I still have
And
to
why
go back to the Tigers.
parole board was allowed to use those
So with respect to the request, for the retrial on the felony murder and the home invasion. You believe that it's correct that that the acquittals block any, and the double jeopardy blocks any retrial on either one of those charges, correct?
Yes, Yeager, the United States Supreme Court case, obviously a precedent. This court pursuant to the supremacy clause is, I can't think of the right word.
Yeah, I hear about that. My husband works for the federal courts, and so I hear about supremacy clause stuff all the time and arguments that have nothing to do with the supremacy clause, but that's fine.
Certainly in regards to the felony murder, Yeager applies. We also contend that it applies to the home invasion because, I mean, Yeager states, you know, acquittals hold weight where in terms of a verdict where hung juries do not, and the essential element portion, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office charged this case as they did. They said home invasion with a predicate offense of assault. They could have done the predicate offense of assault and the predicate offense of larceny or attempted larceny from home. They chose not to because the jury acquitted on the first degree and second degree murder. And the decedent in this case obviously died by stab wounds. You can't, there goes the assault. So there's an essential element. The essential element is the assault. And because he was acquitted on the murder charges, it is our contention that Yeager is still controlling here because you have an essential element and the acquittals are more important than the hung jury.
I think you nailed it. I think that there was a way that you just said that they could have had a retrial, but they didn't charge that way. So I think Yeager precludes retrial on anything.
Not going to say anything because I obviously agree.
Well, I'm just one. You got to count to
No,
two.
I understand that, Your Honor. Not
And
my
I'm the
first,
week link, so.
not my first rodeo here.
Don't think so.
Ooh, you
I don't
nailed
have
it.
any other questions. Anything else?
She agrees.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Honors.
And I believe that you're permitted to appear, but to answer any questions. Is that correct, counsel?
That's correct, Your Honor. Good morning, John Voitalo, representing the appellant in the case ending in 263 and the appellee in the case ending in 604. I do stand for any questions that the court may have as to both cases.
Well, with respect to the home invasion, how do you get around that as being the predicate offense? I mean, his argument is very sound.
There is soundness to it. And so the argument I have is that what Yeager said is that it doesn't matter if it's unlikely or even very unlikely. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still charge it. So that's basically, I have two arguments on that point. Is the first argument is that the jury's verdict was that Mr. Bolanos was the person who committed the murder of Samantha Woll. That's what they found, is that he was not that person. The way we had charged it, obviously I would have preferred that we would have charged it a whole lot different, as a lot of these charges that we did on this, I wish they would have charged it a whole lot different.
And argued it a whole lot different.
And argued it a whole lot different. That is correct, Your Honor. But I'm now looking at it as the cold record. As what was done is what was done.
Nobody appreciates the appellate lawyer in the prosecutor's office.
You know, as the chief of appeals for the office, Your Honor, I certainly appreciate that notion.
No, they really don't.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate truism is that you can help them a heck of a lot. And this, I don't mean to be critical, but this would be a good case to sit down with staff and say, okay, let's take a look at this. Where did we go wrong? What did we do right? You know, these are the pitfalls, you know, because I don't think that, you know, prosecutors, at least in my tenure on the court, never think about this court. They're always, you know, if you don't get their conviction affirmed, it's your fault, right? And I think that all prosecutors' offices would do far better if they would utilize their appellate attorneys far greater as teaching instrumentalities of teaching. So in fact, when I had a law firm, we had 2 appellate attorneys, and every week the appellate attorneys would come and lecture us about changes in the law. I found it to be, anyway, I could go on, but you're stuck with the record you're stuck with, unfortunately for you.
Exactly. So I mean, the first argument is that, is there a factual path that could lead us to continue with the way that it was charged and still continue on with the charges? And granted, it's a narrow path and maybe non-existent, but there is, I think, at least a narrow path that we could argue that the jury's finding that Mr. Bolanos was not the person that killed Samantha Woll,
Nope.
does not necessarily mean that he was not a person who went into the house and committed an assault. It's unlikely. It may be very unlikely, but the Supreme Court's in Yeager said, just because it's very unlikely does not necessarily mean that double jeopardy prevents you from proceeding down that path. The second path we have, obviously, is that even if the way that we had charged it is barred by double jeopardy because the jury had made that finding, there is a way for us to charge home invasion, first degree home invasion, second degree home invasion, by amending the information and making it the way it probably should have been charged in the first place, as a home invasion to commit a larceny and not to commit an assault. I don't think that we would be precluded by double jeopardy to do that.
And nothing was taken, right, out of the home. That was the whole thing. There was no evidence that things were taken out of the home. The purse was there, the computer was there, all the rest of that, right?
Not that, yeah, I'm not aware of anything that actually was taken from the home, but the element that needs to be proven for home invasion is that when he entered or into the home, he had the intent, not that he actually was
Yeah.
successful in committing the larceny.
But how would you prove the intent?
Well, it's circumstantial. I mean, the circumstantial evidence being that, as he admitted at trial, is that he was in the area to commit crimes of opportunity. And there was an opportunity that was presented to him to go into the home and commit a larceny crime of opportunity. So that's where we would use the circumstantial evidence to show his intent, particularly.
Just out of curiosity, what was the prosecutor who tried the case? What was their theory?
So you see what he's saying? He's literally saying, okay, so the whole point of this is so that they cannot charge him again. They want to charge him again with murder and home invasion, even though the jury found him not guilty. They want to be able to charge him again. So the appeals court is saying it's double jeopardy. There's a Supreme Court case that says you cannot do this. So now the appellate attorney is saying, well, even if we can't charge him on the murder, we can still come back and charge him with home invasion if we just amend the circumstances, if we just amend the story. And she's saying, well, how are you going to do that? He didn't take anything. There's nothing was taken. So how are you going to prove that he even went in to the house? And he's saying, well, there was intent because he was in the area and it's circumstantial, but we can say, he was in the area, he had intention, and there was an opportunity there because her door was open. So she gave him the opportunity to go into her house, and he had the intent because he was lurking around. So that's how they're going to try and still stick it to him. Even if he wins this appeal, they're still going to go after him again. They will stop at nothing to continuously go after him until he stays in prison, because they will not admit that they were wrong, that they got the wrong guy, and there's still a killer out there on the streets. That's what the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office is doing. This is the epitome of corruption and wrongful conviction, and putting a person of color, black man, whatever you want to call it, in prison just so they cannot have to admit that they were wrong. Just so they cannot have to admit that the person who confessed to doing it is walking free. That's what they're doing. That is exactly what they're doing.
Of motive here? Was it one of opportunity that perhaps the door was open and he saw that the door was open and he thought he could maybe enter and steal? Was that?
I believe that was
Okay.
what the theory was.
Any other questions?
I do. What is your response to the argument that all of the information regarding the homicide should be taken out? It should be taken into consideration what the Department of Corrections is going to do for parole? Because we know that it needs to be correct, and in this instance, the information was technically correct because it indicated that he was acquitted of all that. But should we be considering that it's being held against defendants?
So I think we're talking about two different issues. And I think what the defense is focused on is a different issue than the issue that has been briefed in a way. I guess the issue of whether or not this is information that should be in the PSI, I think from last session, I think it was this court's in Knepper, Knepper, addressed this, stated you don't need to remove this. Even if there was an acquittal, you could add language in it just to make it clear. And so my argument on that is based on Knepper. There's nothing wrong with what the sentencing court did in this particular case. There's nothing inappropriate for what they did. It seems as though the defense objection to this goes to what.
Sorry, I forgot to turn his off. My apologies.
Well, that woke me up.
I was worried it was your phone, so.
Oh, sorry, no,
You see how irritating
Yeah.
it won't.
it is
believe
because
me.
they're
We're
so
gonna have
blasé.
to remove her from the court.
But what it seems like their argument is that what the parole board is doing, that the parole board is considering this evidence. And I think that is something that should be taken up with the parole board. And that's what they have the opportunities to do, is to appeal what the parole board did. What we're here for is the question as to whether the sentencing court did anything wrong. And I don't see anything based on what the case law.
Sorry. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I apologize.
And I don't see anything that the sentencing court did and that's what this court is here to review, is what the sentencing court did, where anything that they did wrong in keeping this information in it and simply, making it an indication that there was an acquittal on those charges. It seems so. Whatever the parole board's doing, that's something that should be taken up with the parole board, whether it's proper or improper. That's not what this court's here for. This court is here to review what the sentencing court did, and I don't see anything wrong with what the sentencing court did.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Counsel, rebuttal?
No, rely on the briefs.
Excellent. And I apologize again for my timer. This one doesn't work anymore, so I unplugged.
So, yeah, so that is basically how an appeal works. It's very interesting to watch a different side of a court hearing. We've watched trials happen from opening arguments to all the witness testimony into closing arguments. But now this is an appeal. This is what happens on the flip side of things when we're trying to get things fixed that happen in the courtroom. So that's a whole different attorney. So as you can see, Michael has a different attorney going into the appeal process, appealing what Judge Van Houten did in her sentencing, which was absolutely appalling. I encourage you to go back through my other videos, see what Judge Van Houten did in the sentencing process, which is actually where she used against Michael the charges he was not convicted of in order to sentence him for a lengthier time for lying to the police. And actually, then in his parole, the parole board used against him crimes he was not convicted of for keeping him in prison longer. And you can see in the appeal process where the prosecutor is trying to say they will just amend circumstances in order to charge him again. So they will stop at nothing. They will stop at nothing to continuously charge and try to convict again the wrong person in order to keep going on with the lie that they have written, this narrative they have written to continuously convince the family that Michael is the one who killed Samantha, even though Jeffrey Herbstman confessed. Jeffrey Herbstman has no alibi. Jeffrey Herbstman can be seen on camera running from her home. And Jeffrey Herbstman all of a sudden came back into the fold of the synagogue. And Jeffrey Herbstman, no one liked him. No one liked him as her boyfriend. No one cared for him. They were complete polar opposites. And Samantha, for whatever reason, they broke up a couple of times. And I just, there's something to it. There's something to it. So if the boyfriend didn't do it, who was the suspect? Who was the person that was close to Samantha that the police had, that they were ready to have, that they literally had within the first 12 hours? That the community did not need to be concerned, that there was no one out there. There wasn't a stranger on the street going out and killing people in the middle of the night. That this was someone that she knew. They weren't ready to announce who it was. So I just am trying to understand how in the world can Kim Worthy's office, who was so dead set on rape test kits being done, didn't do the rape test kit for Samantha Woll. How an autopsy was not finished in this case when it's a murder investigation. How in the world? This is such a high profile case and nothing, just complete radio silence. And why is it they are telling this family and convincing this family that this random stranger did this when they know good and dang well it's someone much closer to the family, and someone that they have welcomed into their life? So we're going to keep talking about this, and we're going to keep ruffling the feathers until someone there in Detroit, someone in Michigan, someone in this government does something about it, because Michael didn't do it. Kim Worthy's office, Alyssa Slockton's office, Dana Nessel, someone is going to come out and they're going to solve this. Someone's going to solve this, because otherwise, a random YouTuber here is going to figure out who killed Samantha Woll, who killed her, because it wasn't Michael. And no, you will not amend evidence or information or whatever it is you're planning on doing up there, Wayne County, because he didn't do it. You're not going to come out and charge him with anything else because he didn't do it. So there won't be any appealing and coming back and doing anything, because I'm wise. I know what you're doing. I know what's up. So just know we're going to figure out who killed Samantha Woll, and we're not going to be messing around with any fake charges or anything like that. So I saw it. You said it with your own mouth. You told the appellate judge that you would amend and come up with circumstantial evidence. That's what you're going to do. You're going to try to come up with circumstantial evidence. to have additional charges or new charges or whatever it is you're planning on doing up there. But we're wise to it. Everyone's going to know. Everyone. So I appreciate everyone for watching. Stay tuned for more about Samantha Woll. There is way more information out there. If you have not watched my other videos, go back and watch them. But I promise you, there is so much information about Samantha Woll. You have no idea, and how deep this goes into the politics and into that synagogue, Isaac Agree synagogue. You guys, they cannot straddle the fence anymore with Israel and with Palestine. I'm just saying. I've never seen a synagogue that went from rubble and nothing to being worth millions. And you'll find out how much of the evidence from the trial is tied to the synagogue and their donors. And how odd it is that the family, again, is being bamboozled and swindled by the investigation, by the synagogue, and by the donors, and how they are falling for the fact that Jeffrey got use immunity. Why would he get use immunity? Why would they give him that? Someone who has no alibi, who's seen fleeing the scene, and who confessed and was suddenly brought into the fold. That's really weird, right? Really, really weird. And why would they try to come up with charges to go against Michael? Why are they continuously trying to keep him in prison? He's not a throwaway. Nope, he's not a throwaway. And I'm going to make sure no one's going to forget about Samantha Woll. No one's going to forget that her killer is still free. Not going to happen. Thanks, you guys, for watching. I'll see you in the next video. We're going to keep talking about this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.